Good morning, Bapak dan Ibu, ladies and gentlemen. As we begin to start our event, could you please come into the hall and start taking your seats, please? Another reminder, Bapak dan Ibu who are still outside of the venue, outside of the hall, could you please start come into the Suhana Hall and take your seats? Thank you very much. Another gentle reminder, Bapak dan Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, as we are about to begin the events, could you please come into the hall and start taking your seats, please? Thank you to those who have joined us in the Suhana Hall. Welcome, everybody. It's now time to take your seats. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Bapak dan Ibu. Welcome to the launch of the World Bank's Indonesia Economic Prospects Report for December 2025, Digital Foundations for Growth. My name is Rati. I am with the World Bank team that brought you this report, and it is my pleasure to be your MC for today's event. I would like to welcome all of you who are here today at Suhana Hall and those who are joining virtually. We are really excited to have you with us. Before we begin, first, a note on language options. For our online participants connecting through Zoom, please note you may switch to Bahasa Indonesia or English interpreters using buttons at the bottom of your screen. You can switch language during any time of the event. And for participants here with us in Suhana Hall, interpreter devices are available at the back of the hall. Bagi peserta yang bergabung secara virtual lewat Zoom,
So for our virtual participants, you can access the interpretation feature from the bottom part of your screen, and you can choose the Indonesian channel or English channel. For those of you joining offline in Suhana Hall, if you need interpretation devices, you may retrieve them from the back of the room.
Now let me begin with a brief rundown of today's proceedings. We will start the event with opening remarks from Ibu Carolyn Turk, World Bank Division Director for Indonesia and Timor-Leste. Then a welcome address will follow to be delivered by Bapak Jonathan Gilbert, Australian Acting Deputy Ambassador for Indonesia. For today's keynote speech, Bapak Edwin Hidayat, Director General of Digital Ecosystem from Minister of Communication and Digital Affairs, will deliver his remarks. Next, we move to two presentations focused on the report content. First, a presentation on macroeconomic development and outlook by Bapak David Knight, World Bank Lead Economist for Indonesia and Timor-Leste. And second, a presentation on digital foundations for growth by Bapak Jonathan Marskel, Senior Digital Specialist for World Bank Indonesia and Timor-Leste. And for the final set piece of the event, we will have our panel discussion joined by an esteemed line of guests. First, Ibu Vivi Yulaswati, Bappenas Deputy for Economic Affairs and Digital Transformation. Second, Bapak Vikram Sinha, President Director and CEO of Indosat Uridu Hutchison. And third, Ibu Alamanda Shantika, CEO and founder of Binar. This session will be moderated by Bapak Mahesh Uttam Chandani, Regional Practice Director for Digital in East Asia Pacific and South Asia of the World Bank. Today's IEP report can also be downloaded through our website. Please visit worldbank.org/IEP to download it. We also invite you to follow the X or formerly Twitter account of World Bank Indonesia, which is @Bank Dunia. To join the conversation around this report on social media, please use hashtag IEP Bank Dunia. Ladies and gentlemen, proceedings will now commence with opening remarks from Ibu Carolyn Turk, World Bank Division Director for Indonesia and Timor-Leste. Ibu Carrie, the stage is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Selamat pagi dan selamat datang. Distinguished guests, colleagues from the government of Indonesia, development partners, friends from the private sector, from academia, from civil society, and from the media as well. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all today to this launch of the December 2025 edition of the Indonesia Economic Prospects Report. I'd like to start by just acknowledging the distinguished speakers that we have with us today. Edwin Abdullah from the Ministry of Communications and Digital Affairs. Thank you for joining us, Pa. Jonathan Gilbert, Acting Deputy Ambassador of Australia. Thank you, and thank you very much for the generosity of the Government of Australia in supporting the work that we've done in this to bring this report to fruition. Buvivi Yulaswati, Bapanas Deputy for Economic Affairs and Digital Transformation. A pleasure to see you. You're a good friend of the World Bank, so thank you for joining us. We'll be joined by Pa Vikram Sinha, who's the President, Director and CEO of Indosat, Oredo Hutchinson. He's just running a little bit late. And Bu Alamanda Shantika, CEO and founder of BINA, which is a very cool organization I've just been hearing about that helps firms with their digital transformations and runs academies for young Indonesians seeking a career in the digital sector. So let me start by saying a few words on the economic prospects side of the report. The global economy has faced, I think it's fair to say, has faced heightened policy uncertainty, and I think we've all observed the elevated geopolitical and trade tensions that have emerged over the last year or so. So far, countries have adapted through stockpiling and supply chain adjustments, and by taking advantage of easing global financing conditions. And that's helped to sustain economic activity over the last year. In East Asia and the Pacific, economic activity remains strong, and it's been supported by robust trade, by tourism and by consumption. But we're now expecting that global growth might moderate a bit. And why is that? Well, tariffs, you'll all be aware that tariffs have become a more dominant feature of the trading environment. Tariffs are increasingly now being passed through to consumers. And the temporary boost that came from faster trade flows and favorable financing, that's beginning to fade at this point. Greater external trade barriers and limited structural reforms domestically in Indonesia are to some extent constraining the creation of better jobs, at the same time as automation, digitalization, and artificial intelligence, AI, are rapidly reshaping labor markets, not just in Indonesia, but obviously all around the world. This is a feature of labor markets. So you have this uncertain backdrop, and against that backdrop, Indonesia's economy has remained pretty resilient. GDP growth has held at 5% per annum, year on year, which is at a par with previous years, and it surpasses the average of middle-income countries, so that's good news. The growth has been driven by investment and exports that outweigh a slightly weaker private consumption trend. Growth has been relatively broad-based, with services supported by fiscal stimulus and agricultural production rebounding quite significantly. But while we've got this macroeconomic stability, labor market challenges continue to impact household welfare in Indonesia. Labor market indicators are pointing to persistent challenges in job quality, particularly for the youth of the country. And we see this in the data. So employment rose by 1.3% in the year between August 2024 and August 2025. But those employment gains all came in lower paying sectors of the economy. We've also observed that real wages have been trending down since 2018. And middle-skilled jobs are shrinking relative to both low-skilled jobs and high-skilled jobs. So that middle skill band is contracting. These patterns are weighing on household consumption, even as headline macroeconomic indicators remain solid and robust. And this is why it's a pivotal moment to pair Indonesia's macroeconomic stability, one of Indonesia's key strengths, with deeper structural reforms. The goal is pretty clear. You need to boost the capacity of the economy and enable the private sector to create better paying jobs for young Indonesians. So today we're going to focus in on one area of reform, and that is building Indonesia's digital foundations. That is broadband networks, your data center infrastructure, and the regulatory environment for digital development. These are the foundations that will determine how fast and how reliably Indonesians can access the internet, how effectively businesses can operate in the cloud, and how effectively schools and health clinics will be able to deliver modern services. We believe that Indonesia can unlock faster productivity growth and broaden economic opportunities by strengthening the quality and the outreach of digital infrastructure. Stronger digital infrastructure will create new job opportunities, both in the digital sector, but also multiplying out through the wider economy, and especially for youth and for women in less advantaged areas who are most constrained by limited connectivity. Achieving this goal is going to require much faster broadband speeds. It will require universal and affordable fixed broadband, expanded and sustainable data center and cloud capacity, and stronger, more diverse national backbone. It's also going to require future-ready skills, along with stronger data protection and cybersecurity to safeguard digital trust. With that framing, my colleagues Dave Knight and Jonathan Maskell will present today's report findings, and they're going to share some policy ideas that we have that can both shore up Indonesia's macroeconomic stability and at the same time drive reforms forwards and build digital foundations. Let me thank again once again all of our speakers and our partners for being here. It's a great pleasure to officially launch this report. And I'm looking forward to the conversations and the insights that we're going to hear today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ibu Kerry, for your opening remarks. Esteemed guests, we will now continue with a welcome address from Bapak Jonathan Gilbert, Acting Deputy Ambassador of Australia. Good morning, Pak Jonathan. Over to you.
Selamat pagi, Bapak dan Ibu yang terhormat. Selamat datang
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to greet Pak Edwin Hidayat, selaku Direktur Jenderal Ekosistem Digital dari Komdigi. Kemudian Ibu Vivi Yulaswati, selaku Deputi untuk Perekonomian dan Transformasi Digital di Bappenas.
President, Director and CEO BT Indosat Tbk, Miss Carolyn Turk, Country Director, World Bank Indonesia and Timor-Leste, David Knight, Lead Economist, and Jonathan Maskell, Senior Digital Specialist from the World Bank. Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Australian Government, I'm really delighted to be able to join you today for the launch of the December 2025 edition of Indonesia Economic Prospects Report. For 13 years, Australia has been a proud supporter of these reports through a long-standing partnership with the World Bank in Indonesia. And like our Indonesian friends, we too, importantly, benefit from the bank's impartial analysis of the macroeconomic context, the deep dive each iteration takes into one key development challenge facing Indonesia, and importantly, its insightful recommendations. The focus of this latest report on digital foundations for growth really could not be better timed. Digitalisation and its implications for all facets of the government, the economy and our societies is, it would seem, increasingly a core dimension of everything that we do. Importantly, it's also an area where we, the Australian government, really see strong promise to expand our bilateral cooperation with Indonesia. And in May this year, Prime Minister Albanese and President Prabowo agreed to explore new opportunities to expand digital trade under our free trade agreement, the Australia-Indonesia Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. And through engagement with partner agencies like Pak Edwin's Ministry for Communications and Digital Affairs, we are steadily growing our cooperation across an array of issues, including digital transformation, data centres, cable connectivity, cyber security, and more recently, online safety for our children and all citizens. As the Australian Embassy prepares to begin major new phases of our economic, infrastructure, climate, trade and investment development programs, you might know them as Prospera, Kinetic and Catalyst, in early 2026, we're really hoping to expand and deepen this cooperation. One way we're seeking to do this is by bringing together Indonesian and Australian agencies, such as our Department of Infrastructure and Communications and e-Safety, both of whom visited Jakarta in November. Also with our Digital Transformation Agency and others to share lessons from the rollout of digital initiatives like Australia's National Broadband Network. We're also working with Indonesian partners to share lessons from our integrated online portal for services from tax to social assistance and health insurance. And finally, we're also working with Indonesia more recently and importantly on our new social media minimum age restrictions, which many of you have seen on the news, went live on the 10th of December. So these initiatives and many more really advance the Australian government's efforts to harness the benefits of digitalisation, which we estimate could reach up to $57 billion per annum by 2030. But all are obviously generating their own valuable lessons along the way. So this report really identifies considerations specific to Indonesia, but it also highlights many common opportunities and importantly challenges, be those the persistent digital divide, digital infrastructure gaps, or growing threats to online safety and security. So in conclusion, Australia really looks forward to drawing on this report with Indonesia as we both seek to harness the potential of digitalisation to promote innovation, productivity, inclusive growth, and importantly, economic transformation. So today, I'd really like to say terima kasih atas dedikasi dan kemitrian Anda, and also I'd like to extend my congratulations to Country Director, Ms. Carolyn Turk, and her dedicated World Bank team for this important contribution today. So thank you very much. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Pak Jonathan, for joining us and for your welcome address. A brief reminder again, for our online participants connecting through Zoom, please note that you may switch to Bahasa Indonesia or English interpreters using buttons at the bottom of your screen. You can switch language during any part of the event. And for participants here with us in Suhana Hall, interpreter devices are available at the back of the hall. Bagi peserta yang bergabung,
To participants who joined us virtually through Zoom, you can select the language interpretation feature at the bottom of your screen and select Indonesian or English. And to those of you who are at the Suhana Hall, if you need one, the simultaneous interpretation device is provided at the back of this room.
Ibu, we had invited Ibu Mutia Hafid, Minister of Communication and Digital Affairs, to deliver a keynote speech at today's event. However, due to an unforeseen high-level assignment, Ibu Mutia is regrettably unable to join us in person. Nevertheless, she has delegated her attendance to Bapak Edwin Hidayat, the Director General of Digital Ecosystem. Good morning, Pak Edwin. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please make your way up to the stage, Pak.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues, and partners from the World Bank. Ibu Carolyn Turk, Country Director, World Bank Indonesia and Timor-Leste. Mr. David Stephen Knight, Lead Economist. Jonathan, who is sitting next to me from the Australian Embassy, and Jonathan Marshall, the one who greeted me in, that's the Senior Digital Specialist of World Bank, Mahesh Uttam Chandani, Regional Practice Director for Digital World Bank, Pak Fikram, hi, Pak Fikram, CEO of Indosat Uridu, Alamanda, Ala Santika, we met several times. Ala is always the speakers. Okay, first allow me to express our sincere appreciation to the World Bank for producing this, the latest Indonesia Economic Prospect Report, with a special focus on digital foundations for growth. This report arrives at an important moment when Indonesia is entering a decisive decade, where digitalizations must become not only enablers of efficiency, but the true engine of national competitiveness. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to quote a report from Prasasti. Prasasti is a new think tank just established this year, but they released a report this year also about Indonesia's digital economy. Indonesia already contributes like 40% of total digital economy in Asian 6. That is projected to increase more than double by 2025. And it is expected to reach like 220 and to 360 billion by 2030. Furthermore, the Asian DEFA scenarios, Indonesia digital potential is estimated at around $800 billion, showing that Indonesia is not catching up. Indonesia is positioned to lead. This is not theoretical. We have several data. Google said that Indonesia digital economy is about $130 billion, but Prasasti said the Indonesian digital economy is only like 117 billion, or approximately 8.4% of the national GDP, with growth outpacing the national economy every year since 2010. That reinforces a simple point. Digital is already a material economic engine, not a supporting functions. Regarding the visions of the Indonesia Emas, our presidents keep saying that we need economic growth about 8% annually. Today we grow, World Bank mentions it's around 5%. The gap must be filled by new productivity drivers. Based on the analysis of Prasasti, our team shows that the digital transformations is one of the few levers capable of closing this gap, particularly through high-impact sectors such as information and communications, financial services, manufacturing, business services, constructions. These sectors collectively generate the highest digital-induced productivity uplift. In other words, without digital 8% growth is theoretically is hard to achieve. Now I'm going to talk about the efficiency argument. One of the most striking findings recently that, well, for me, Indonesia's I-core has been deteriorated steadily from 3.3 in 1985 to 6.6 in 2023. This means that we need twice as much as investment to generate the same GDP output as before. But digital economy is different. According to the report of Prasasti, the I-core for digital economy is only 4.3, and the ICT sector's I-core is about 5.1, still more efficient than the national baseline. And one of our startup, one of the unicorn in Indonesia, the I-core is estimated around 2.3. That's the Alamanda used to work for that company. I'm not going to say this here. Representing about 87% of efficiency gain over the digital economy's efforts and 65% gain over Indonesia's overall I-core. If this is matter for policy, if Indonesia wants high growth, low friction investment returns, digital is where capital produces the highest multiplier. Ladies and gentlemen, at ComDG, we believe that digitalization is fundamentally a question of adaptations. In a landscape of rapid, unpredictable technological disruptions, static strategies will fail. Nations and corporations that survive and thrive are those who build adaptive capacity, the ability to reconfigure, realign, and reallocate resources as the environment changes. To frame this adaptive capacity, we propose a 6C framework. C, a set of 6 interconnected capabilities that must be shared by government, industry, and society. The first C, which is actually the main topic of the report. The first C is actually not only one C, it's actually 4C actually. Connectivity, cloud, and computing, and it goes without saying, cybersecurity. Connectivity, cloud services, and computing power must be treated not as luxuries, but as national utilities. I remember like 15 years ago when Mr. Yusuf Kala was the vice president of President SBY, he was saying that in order to boost the investment to Indonesia, especially the FDI, so that we can have a higher economic growth, we must have at least 3. Says that lower interest rate, more electrical powers, and better labor law. If I may say right now, back then, like 17 years ago when Yusuf Kala was the vice president, yes, but right now, not only power that is needed for Indonesia, we need also connectivity to empower the growth of our FDI. Without ubiquitous and reliable and affordable infrastructure, Indonesia cannot lower the barriers for innovations and enable equal participation of the digital economy. This includes spectrum, fixed broadband, backbone networks, and data centers, exactly the areas highlighted in these IEP editions. I also mentioned in the VIP that we are currently also planning to have a set of regulations to restructure the industry, both in broadband and also cellular operators. The second C is, we call it capital. It's a multi-layer investment stack. Indonesia needs a capital ecosystem that supports innovations at every stage. Tier 1, for example, Tier 1 is research and development and deep tech. It's actually in our new design legislation for artificial intelligence. Research and innovation is one of the most important key elements that are being pushed to be developed. Tier 2 is capital for venture and growth capital for startups. Tier 3, financing pathways for MSMEs, UKM bahasa Indonesia, micro, small, and medium enterprises. A digital economy cannot scale if its sources of capital are fragmented. Our ambition is to build multi-layered, fit-for-purpose capital stacks that match the life cycles of innovations. Number 3, this is also very important. This is the one who sometimes I cannot sleep because of this. It's the talent supply chain. Every corporation and the nation itself requires just-in-time human capital. Indonesia must produce and mobilize talent at scale, not only in coding or engineering, but also in digital product designs, data, AI, cybersecurity, and digital operations. The World Economic Forum report this year saying that there's about a billion jobs that will evolve, not gone, but evolve because of digitalizations. That means we have to be more digitally savvy. This is something that Indonesia is still also have a lot of things to do. We are now rethinking talent formations as a national supply chain, one that is coordinated, measurable, and aligned with industry demand. The fourth C is, I call it commerce. It's actually content and data, content and value exchange. Indonesia is moving forward to an economy where data has velocity and value. To unlock this, we need trusted frameworks for data exchange, content interoperability, and digital transactions, supported by mechanisms such as conceptual data exchange, smart contracts, blockchain-based verifications, secure cross-platform value transfers. This is how we transfer data from a passive assets into productive currency. So data is the new currency. Now, number 5 and 6 are not the classic one. Well, 1 to 4 is, well, you hear it everywhere. This is a new approach. How about number 5 is compliance, a regulatory interface that enables. So compliance is not just for the purpose of controlling, but for the purpose of enabling. Regulation should function as a manager, not merely a restrictions. Compliance by design, permanent sandboxes, and cross-sector experimentations allow businesses to scale safety without slowing innovations. Indonesia must shift from rule setting to risk balancing and from policing to partnering with innovators. This is also reflected in our drafted legislation on artificial intelligence. Number 6 is also the thing that we are currently doing and keep thinking about it is about catalysis. It's creating demand, not just supply. Innovations fails without markets. Indonesia must strengthen demand-side mechanisms such as innovation procurement, outcome-based contracting, and national technology priority roadmaps. In our current legislations, we also do the roadmaps of AI. We have 10 priority sectors. Government role is not only to provide infrastructure, but to signal market, coordinate buying power, and accelerate adoption so that innovation becomes commercially viable. So those are the 6 C's that we are currently adopting as our frameworks of work. So these 6 elements from continuous interblocking cycles: infrastructures lowers barriers, capital identifies promising bets, talent executes, commerce creates values, compliance provides safe scaling pathways, catalysis directs and the next investment wave. This cycle repeats, enabling Indonesia to adapt faster and the disruption around us. Now let me talk a bit about our latest program of Ganda Spark. Gardas Park is actually an innovation hub. We call it Gardas Park Innovation Hub. This initiative embodies the principle of locally, so it's based on the principle of nationally coordinated. It's not like others, it's nationally coordinated, but locally adapted. And finally, globally connected. It brings innovation hubs across Indonesia into flat national platform that integrates research, industry, talent, and capital. Gardas Park is our commitment to building an innovation ecosystem that is not Jakarta-centric, but Indonesia-centric. One where every region can contribute and benefit from the digital economy. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, the World Bank's report strengthened our momentum. It gives us clarity, alignment, and shared vocabulary across ministries, industry, and global partners. But more importantly, it reminds us that digital transformations is a strategic choice, not a technological inevitability. Together, we can build a digital foundation with a robust, adaptive, and inclusive, a foundations that support not only economic growth, but also national resilience. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pa Edwin, for your remarks and insights. Before we continue, I would like to invite our audience to join the conversation in social media. Please follow our X or Twitter account @BankDunia and use hashtag IEP Bank Dunia. The World Bank account will be live tweeting highlights from our presentations. Please take a look, like, and repost those tweets. I'd like also to note that all presentations as well as the IEP report will be available for download later today through our website, which is worldbank.org/IEP. Now, Bapak dan Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, next onto our agenda, we have a presentation on Indonesia's economy and outlook by Bapak David Knight, lead economist for the World Bank Indonesia and Timor-Leste. I would like to invite Pak David to take the stage to begin his presentation.
Thank you. I'm still learning Bahasa, so let's see how I go with this. Selamat pagi dan selamat datang.
Good morning and welcome. Thank you for your presence.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, colleagues from the government of Indonesia, development partners, the private sector, academia, civil society, and media. Distinguished speakers, Pa Edwin, Pa Jonathan, Ibu Vivi, Pa Vikram, Pa Jonathan II, Ibu Alamanda. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the launch of the December 2025 edition of the Indonesia Economic Prospects Report, which was prepared by our decorated senior economist Wael Mansour and a large team at the World Bank. Please bear with me. Done. So the global economy has been mired in very high levels of uncertainty starting this year, especially due to changes in global trade policies. Over the course of the year, though, two things have happened. Firstly, countries have found ways to manage and in this new global environment, reorganizing trade and value chains. Secondly, the global policy environment has become clearer. As a result, as we see on the left, global uncertainty has fallen a little during the course of this year. but it remains elevated, very elevated by historical standards. Nevertheless, Indonesia's economic growth has remained remarkably stable and resilient over the course of this year, with growth at 5% year on year over the first 3 quarters to date. So I will just explain a little bit more about this growth experience, but I would say the key drivers behind this resilience has been strong exports and stimulus from the government. Domestic demand, both private investment and private consumption, has been resilient this year and has maintained almost the same levels of growth as the previous year, with private consumption only slightly lower. Government consumption has fallen significantly due to relatively slower execution of priority projects. However, it is important to note that the public sector has played an important role in providing stimulus support to private consumption. But one of the key elements, as I mentioned here, is a significant increase in the contribution of net exports to growth this year so far. And it has accounted for about 1/5 of growth. And much of this is due to 2 factors. First of all, to front-loading of exports in advance of anticipated changes in tariffs, increases in tariffs, as well as favorable terms of trade, increased demand and prices for some of Indonesia's key export commodities, such as palm oil, iron, and gold. And staying on this topic of trade and the external account, this strong performance of exports has led to a current account surplus this year so far, actually the first since 2022, which is illustrated with the dotted line. Now, normally when the current account improves, the balance of payments overall improves. However, this has not been the case this year so far in Indonesia, and the balance of payments has been in deficit. And the reason for that is that there has been significant capital outflows from the country, especially portfolio finance flowing out over the course of this year, accompanied with a moderate depreciation of the rupiah, although this has been mitigated by usage of official reserves from the central bank. Now, why did portfolio flows leave the country, especially at a time when there is a loosening of interest rates in advanced economies? We often see at that time flows of capital into emerging markets. Well, to understand that, I want to just talk about monetary policy and the inflation environment, which I think will give us the answer. So looking at inflation, Indonesia's inflation has remained anchored and low, relatively low, over the course of the period. Having said that, it has increased from 1.6% year on year to 2.7% latest. However, much of this increase has been driven by volatile components beyond the immediate control of monetary policy. And core inflation, indicated in the dark blue, remains low and in fact has fallen a little over the year. This anchored inflation environment has provided the space for the central bank to loosen monetary policy. And they have done so proactively, reducing interest rates by 125 basis points, standing at now 4.75%. But this loosening was one of the most rapid amongst emerging markets in the world, with the chart on the right here showing a selection of emerging markets who started the year with relatively moderate inflation rates, and the US and the EU. And so as a result of this loosening, this has been one of the primary factors in leading to outflows of investors who are seeking a return on their investments. So, moving to discuss the implications and the effects of monetary policy. Of course, in a benign inflation environment, looser monetary policy is desirable because it enables lower interest rates, cheaper borrowing, people to invest, and also people to borrow to consume to a certain extent. However, in the case of Indonesia, we have not seen a significant stimulus through that mechanism. As we can see on the chart on the left here, compared to cumulative interest rate reductions over the last 12 months of 150 basis points, the market lending rates on the market have only fallen by a much smaller amount, 15 basis points, up till latest. Now, there are a couple of possible reasons for that. First of all, monetary policy transmission, lower rates, can take time to pass through if there are special locked-in deposit rates for depositors, and that probably did play a part initially, but as we see in the light blue, the deposit rate has fallen significantly now. And this likely points to other monetary policy transmission frictions in the economy, in the financial sector, including limited financial sector development, as well as limited availability of investable projects. And accordingly, the private sector credit growth has remained muted over the year at 7.4% latest. It falls below the central bank's target for the year. Moving now to look at the fiscal stimulus aspect, there are a couple of key developments that I want to highlight here. First of all, the periodic rounds of fiscal stimulus over the course of this year have been, as I mentioned earlier, an important element to sustain private consumption growth. They amounted to about 0.5% of GDP cumulatively, which is more than double the level last year. So this was quite a significant acceleration. That fiscal stimulus expansion was enabled due to notable underspending on some of the large and key priority programs, including the Nutritious Meals Program and the Priority Housing Program. And looking at the aggregate picture, another key development this year has been an overall tightening of the fiscal envelope. So we see that revenues in the year to date have fallen from 10.2% at the same time last year to 8.9% now. So it's more than 1 percentage point less. Now, despite expenditure savings over the year, that has resulted in a higher fiscal deficit from 1.4 to 2%. Okay, now I just want to step away from the macro and look a bit more at the household perspective for a couple of minutes. So official estimates show that household poverty fell moderately in the year up until March 2025. But more recent monthly data from the Listening to Indonesia survey, and this is self-reported household data, indicates a trend of increased subjective poverty in the latest period, increasing to 26.9% of households considering themselves to be poor, which is a significant increase over the previous period. And alongside this, the same survey also suggests a perceived worsening of economic conditions in the country, especially amongst self-reported middle-class households. So I think some of these trends point to why fiscal stimulus was necessary to sustain relatively robust consumption growth this year. But why are household perceptions of well-being worsening? Well, Bukhari mentioned it at the outset, and I think a major factor behind this is underlying and persistent challenges in the labor markets. And it's not about volume. The number of jobs, the net increases in jobs has been very strong, including this year and for several years. But at the same time, there has been a persistent weakening of wages. And to some extent, you could say a hollowing out of middle-skilled workers. Now, this is a problem both for those households and for the economy at large, because middle and higher income households tend to make up the bulk of consumption. Moving to the outlook now. So, I mean, as I mentioned at in the early slides, growth this year has been supported both by resilient domestic demand, but supported by stimulus and a temporary increase in exports. Now, we do not anticipate as strong exports growth in the future, because a lot of it was driven by a one-off factor of front-loading, and as the terms of trade stabilize. So going forward, we expect growth to remain at 5%, be at 5% over the full course of this year, and increase slightly up to 5.2% in 2 years' time. We anticipate that private consumption will continue to be a major driver of growth, but somewhat less as in future years, amidst this underlying weakness in the labor market. Investment growth will step up in our forecasts due to three factors. First of all, the investment drive led via Danantara. Secondly, continued accommodative monetary policy, assuming that it gradually feeds through into markets and becomes effective. And thirdly, the implementation of reforms that will support high value and increased foreign direct investment. We anticipate the budget deficit to be 2.8% this year, and at a similar level going forward. Revenues may fall short of ambitious targets set next year, which would lead to a need for expenditure being trimmed. In terms of the risks to the outlook, which we see as broadly balanced, I think one key factor is that for us, much of the outlook hinges on the effectiveness of implementation of reforms. And I think these are, I'll talk a little bit more, but really critical to drive sustained and higher growth, given the economy is now closing its output gap. Other upside risks include stronger than expected trading partner growth, especially in China, and more robust commodity prices for Indonesia's exports. On the downside, a new round of tightening of monetary conditions and further climatic and natural disaster-related events, such as the devastating floods that we've seen in Sumatra and other places, would be likely to adversely affect economic activity. I'll just mention now a couple of the priorities that the report highlights, in addition to the detailed digital foundations that Jonathan will talk about next. So I referred to it, but really one of our main recommendations, which continues on that of the last IEP, is the importance of a program that builds both the demand and supply for quality jobs, not jobs alone. And this is about increasing the competitiveness and the demand for labor of firms, businesses in Indonesia. One key element of this is business enabling policies. Things actually that many areas that the government is already pursuing reforms in, such as business license and import license liberalization, in foreign investment reform, and the debottlenecking and deregulation agenda more generally. So we very much support these measures, and these reforms could be taken further to have a major effect at scale. In tandem, we also see the value of building supply side to meet with that expected increase in quality job demand. And this would be about targeted labor supply measures, such as active labor market policies, and strengthening labor market information systems. Things like programs to improve lifelong learning in market-relevant skill sets. The recently announced internship program under, I believe, the fourth stimulus package was a good example of that. Finally, to make a couple of points on two other areas of priorities we refer to in the report. On fiscal policy, I referred to the tightening fiscal envelope, and with a lot of high priority and high return expenditure needs, there is a high value in adopting a bold revenue strategy. Quick wins in things like tax administration, digitalization, the adjustment of thresholds for businesses, and enhancing compliance could improve revenue without significant changes in the existing tax policy. And to address some of the financial sector challenges, including those I referred to earlier, and improve access to finance, priorities would be time-bound credit guarantee program and other risk-sharing facilities alongside the development of digital credit infrastructure, which can catalyze high-potential MSME growth and translate monetary easing into more investment, crowding in private capital. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Pak David, for that engaging presentation. Now, dear esteemed guests, Bapak dan Ibu, we will continue with a presentation on digital foundations for growth, which will be presented by Bapak Jonathan Marskel, Senior Digital Specialist for the World Bank Indonesia and Timor-Leste. Pak Jonathan, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. I was hoping to be the Deputy Ambassador of Australia, but unfortunately, I'm still a Senior Digital Specialist. Thank you, everyone, for joining this morning, and I'd like to acknowledge our esteemed speakers and lots of friends from Komdigi, Bapenas, and the private sector. I will be presenting Part B of the report. This is a summary, and so I encourage you, there's a lot of content in the report, so I encourage you to download the full report so you can gather all the different details and nuances. Okay, so we decided, when we say digital foundations for growth, we decided to focus on infrastructure because it is the often unseen thing that enables you to download apps, to make digital payments, to verify your identity online, all these cool things that we see with digitalization. It is actually all running on data centers, fiber optic cables, through satellites, through cellular towers, etc. And when we wanted to describe the digital economy in Indonesia, we identified that the gaps that I'll present in a moment are actually binding constraints for Indonesia to realize its full potential of digitalization. As has been said by Pa Edwin a moment ago, digitalization is going to be one of the key drivers for Indonesia to realize its development and economic objectives. As we know, the government wants to achieve 8% GDP growth. It wants to become a high-income economy within the next 20 years. And what we've done in the report is do a mini literature review of how digitalization will, let's go back, can boost growth by up to 1.5%. It can boost labor productivity, firm productivity, Data centers have a link between enhanced trade, cross-border trade in digital services, and we also have found that connecting schools to internet actually leads to a statistically significant improvement in average student test scores. So there is now an economic rationale for boosting the digital infrastructure in Indonesia. There has been a rapid growth in internet adoption in Indonesia. So here you'll see over the past 10 years, the thick red line, from 22% to 73%, which is broadly tracking other middle-income peers in Southeast Asia. But we still have found that when we speak about digitalization in Indonesia, there's two Indonesias. There's the unconnected Indonesia, so the 27% of Indonesians who still do not have access to the internet. But then there's the connected yet constrained Indonesia, which is the 73% who are experiencing relatively poor internet speeds and are not necessarily yet using the internet for productive purposes. In fact, compared to other middle-income countries in the region, Indonesians tend to use it more for social media, buying stuff, and less so for online training, online education, online work, etc. One of the good things that we've seen in Indonesia is a reduction in various digital divides. You'll see here on the left, this shows urban, rural, and male-female differences in internet and smartphone penetration. It has broadly come down across the board, with the exception of male and female internet use. Interestingly, there's been a slight increase in the gap between female and male internet users. But quite alarmingly, you'll see here on the right-hand side, the provinces of Indonesia and internet penetration, internet adoption, and it goes below 50% in eastern Indonesia and as low as 7% in Papua highlands. This slide, probably one of the most important slides of my presentation, compares the mobile and fixed broadband internet of Indonesia with the rest of ASEAN. On the left-hand side, you'll see when we speak about mobile broadband, Indonesia performs really well when it comes to access and affordability. Mobile internet is affordable thanks to competition, thanks to shared tower infrastructure, and that has led to increased access. Where Indonesia performs poorly is on average internet speeds. At 48 megabits per second, it is well behind Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam at 130, 140, 160 megabits per second. On the right-hand side, or when we speak about fixed broadband, this is the internet that you get at home, Indonesia performs poorly across the board. Very low penetration of fixed broadband, only 22% of households. Internet speeds average internet speeds at 41 megabits per second, and home internet is not affordable. It's at 4.8% of GNI per capita. It is well above the international recommendation of 2 to 3%. The other element that we see as an opportunity for improvement is connectivity for schools, health clinics, and village offices. Only 22% of schools in Indonesia have internet speeds of 100 megabits per second. When you consider that globally schools are aiming for 1 gigabit speeds, this is a major challenge that Indonesia needs to face. And you'll see as many as 41,000 schools, 18% of schools have no internet at all. It is a bit better for madrasa because that is centrally managed, and Puskesmas, only 24% report, these health clinics report having good internet. In terms of the domestic backbone of Indonesia, the good news is that 100% of provinces and almost all kabupaten have fiber optic cables. However, when we go down to the local level, only 50% have a fiber optic distribution point. So in our report, we propose a roadmap to improve Indonesia's digital infrastructure, multiply mobile internet speeds, make fixed broadband universal and affordable, expand data center capacity, strengthen and diversify the digital backbone. But very importantly, and this is a theme throughout the report, we emphasize that actually part of the strategy should be to enable more private investment. to improve the situation, it doesn't require a lot more incremental public investment. It may require smarter public investment, but we see tremendous potential for the private sector if the right regulatory and investment environment was put in place. So when we speak about the first objective of multiplying mobile broadband speeds, on the left-hand side here is the average mobile internet speeds over the last 6 years. And you'll see these big jumps, India, Vietnam, Brazil at 250 megabits per second. What caused this big jump was 5G. Indonesia is one of the slowest major economies to transition to 5G. In fact, only one operator currently offers the services. Now, one of the challenges for accelerating the 5G transition is inadequate spectrum. Spectrum are the invisible airwaves that connect our phones to the cellular towers that bring us internet. Unfortunately, Indonesia is last in the G20 and fourth last in the Asia-Pacific region in terms of the amount of spectrum allocated to mobile internet. And so we recommended that the government, Komdigi, urgently allocate 2 existing bands that it already has, 700 megahertz and 2.6 gigahertz, to the mobile operators through auctions or other means. The golden band, sorry, let me go back. So the golden band for 5G is 3.5 gigahertz. This is currently partially occupied by satellites to ATMs. So if you're driving around Jakarta and you see a satellite above a BRI ATM, our recommendation to the government is in urban areas, or at least in Java, allocate that to mobile operators rather than satellite, where the ATMs can use mobile internet, fixed internet. And what we'll see is a similar jump in, let's say, 6 to 12 months of internet speeds. But in order to enable that, the cost of spectrum needs to come down. Indonesia charges, our calculations are 11.5% of mobile operator revenues for the cost of spectrum, which is much higher than the global average of around 6 to 7%. Our recommendation is not just to reduce that non-tax revenue, but to do that combined with what we call performance and coverage obligations, which would obligate the operators for the reduced cost of spectrum to increase mobile speeds and to close blank spots. And we view this as a very smart way to mobilize private investment. When we speak about fixed broadband, so this box here shows the total number of households in Indonesia, those that are within reach of fixed broadband and those that are actually connected. There's a big gap here, and what we recommend is, again, mobilization of private capital by leveraging the school, health clinic, other government office connectivity. So as I mentioned earlier, there is a big gap in connectivity, and the government can pool this demand and make areas of Indonesia that are not currently commercially viable more viable by guaranteeing demand over multiple years. Likewise, in line with what Edwin was mentioning in his opening remarks, more promotion of open access. Indonesia does not have a shared digital backbone. And so promoting more sharing of the active capacity on fiber optic cables, but also sharing the PLN poles that exist across the country. 2/3 of the cost of expanding fiber optic cables in rural areas is the cost of building the poles. And so if PLN was to share its poles with fiber companies, this would dramatically reduce the cost and thus increase the commercial viability of rural deployment. Then when we speak of data centers, so Indonesia is in a regional competition for data center investment. Despite Indonesia being the largest digital economy in the region, it is third for data center capacity. Big tech operators are often building data centers to serve Indonesia in Malaysia, Singapore, or Thailand. So what we recommend is to boost the investment environment. When we speak to the data center companies, they complain about the time and complexity of permitting, the ambiguity of the data governance regulations, uncertainty about access to electricity, especially about renewable electricity. And so our recommendations are to streamline permitting and to better coordinate special economic zone policies to make it easier for data center operators to build and to create more incentives that at least compete with Malaysia and Thailand. The second recommendation is around data governance. So primarily, we're talking about the government regulation on personal data protection. A lot of companies in the digital space are facing a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty because despite the data protection law passing in 2022, the implementing regulation has not yet been issued. And so this creates a little bit of uncertainty about any processing of personal data, and so our recommendation is to address that by issuing that regulation urgently. On the digital backbone, so what we have found is that currently there is a Ministry of Maritime decree that limits international submarine cables to landing only in Batam, Kupang, Jayapura, and Manado. In other words, no Jakarta. This is despite the fact that Jakarta is the commercial hub of the country and hosts 2/3 of the data centers. Around 80% of internet traffic comes through Singapore to Batam, and this creates what we call a single corridor dependency. And so that's why we emphasize diversification. Our recommendations are to amend the regulatory framework to allow at least Jakarta to accept international submarine cables, but possibly other hubs like Surabaya, Medan, etc. And also to review the tariffs of Palaparing. Palaparing is a backbone public-private partnership initiated by Bhakti under Komdigi. The tariffs of Palaparing are unfortunately high, which has led to underutilization, around 20% utilization, and this has a flow-on effect of increasing the cost of internet, particularly in eastern Indonesia, which needs internet the most, as I shared earlier. So a review of the tariffs of Palaparing will be very important. Likewise, looking at the sustainability of Bhakti, Bhakti currently takes up around 60% of Komdigi's budget, and so considering shifting its role from being an operator, which it currently is, and the very significant OPEX burden that creates, to becoming a market facilitator, right? So crowding in more private capital through viability gap financing. Likewise, we see great potential for technologies like fixed wireless and satellite, but these do not replace the need for a widespread fiberization of this country. Finally, I would just say that I don't want to leave an impression that digital infrastructure is the panacea for all of the digital challenges and opportunities that Indonesia faces. As has been mentioned by all the other speakers before me, it will require investment in digital skills and digital trust in particular. When we speak about digital trust, this is cybersecurity, this is data protection. If Indonesian citizens and firms do not have the confidence to interact in the digital domain, doesn't matter how fast the internet is or how many data centers you have, they're not going to be utilized. And so we recommend also combining these investments and reforms in digital infrastructure with a scaling up of efforts around digital skills and trust. With that, I thank you very much. Terima kasih.
Thank you very much for your insightful presentation, Pak Jonathan II. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now head on to the panel discussion on digital foundations for growth, which would be moderated by Bapak Mahesh Uttam Chandani, Regional Practice Director for Digital in East Asia Pacific and South Asia of the World Bank. Pak Mahesh, please do make your way up to the stage. And could our esteemed panelists also please join on the stage? Let us welcome Ibu Vivi Yulaswati. Silakan Ibu. Bappenas Deputy for Economic Affairs and Digital Transformation. Also Bapak Vikram Sinha, President Director and CEO of Indosat Uridu Hutchison. And finally, Ibu Alamanda Shantika, CEO and founder of Binar. Over to you, Pak Mahesh.
Thank you very much, Ibu Rati. Good morning, everyone, distinguished guests and colleagues. It's an honor for me to be here in Jakarta today and to be present not only at the launch of this important report, but also to have the opportunity to moderate a discussion with such distinguished leaders. I want to just touch on the final point that my colleague Jonathan made about the three core elements involved in digital transformation and that will be foundational to Indonesia leveraging this opportunity. And we haven't spent a lot of time today talking about artificial intelligence. I'm hoping on this panel we'll talk about it a little bit, but when I travel around the ASEAN region, what I find is countries really trying to ready themselves for the AI revolution that is already upon us. And those foundational elements that Jonathan talked about and that the report discusses are going to be critical to leveraging this AI opportunity for growth and for jobs. So with that said, I'd like to introduce our very distinguished panel. Ibu Vivi Yulaswati is the Deputy for Digital Transformation Economic Affairs at Bappenas, where she leads national development planning related to digital infrastructure, digital ecosystem, digital security, and digital government, amongst other areas. She's worked at Bappenas across many sectors, including agriculture, financial inclusion, and social assistance, playing a central role in shaping Indonesia's policies and programs for inclusive growth. Pak Vikram Sinha is the President, Director, and CEO of Indosat Ooredoo Hutchison, and a seasoned global telecom executive with extensive experience in Asia and Africa. And he is committed to leveraging technology to empower Indonesia to bridge the digital divide and expand opportunities for advancing a more connected and inclusive digital future. And Ibu Alamanda Shantika is the founder and CEO of Binar, which offers corporate training, IT consulting, IT outsourcing, and custom AI agents for companies undergoing digital transformation in Indonesia. She's also the founder of the Binar Academy, which provides accessible industry-aligned digital education programs to build Indonesia's next generation of tech talent. And previously, she was part of the early leadership team at Gojek. So, Ibu Vivi, if I can start with you, if the RPJMN sets ambitious targets for universal broadband access, including expanding fixed broadband to 90% of the Kecamatan. What are the government's main plans and priorities to close this rural broadband gap that has been identified so clearly, including in our report, over the next 4 years?
First of all, thank you very much for having me in this panel. I think I also take an advantage to get an insight from the economic part of this report. And of course, congratulations for Ibu Carolyn and also the team for the great report, bringing the digitalizations be part of the report. So to answer of your question, actually the target of 90% of the sub-district coverage for the universal broadband is estimated based on the baseline of the 2030 for the broadband around 70.5% and the 78% in end of the 2025. So some of the strategies to achieve it include to accelerating the fiber network rollout, I think as suggested by Jonathan, that encourage the telco operators to use the passive infrastructure like the schools, the the power lines, poles, as well as the government offices to lay out the new fiber optic cables. It has to be open access and also non-discriminatory for other telco operators. Other is also routing from the existing sub-district that has the fiber optic to also approaching for the nearby sub-districts. And also, like also Jonathan suggested, to create a demand pool by providing the direct stimulus for securing dedicated bandwidth capacity via lease network mechanism for public utilities such as schools, community health services, as well as the village offices. The other things that we could do is to eliminate the blank spot and improving service capacity, particularly in the remote places. So currently, ComDigi has deployed the 4G network infrastructure by mobile operators in the villages that has a blank spot. And then to improve low mobile internet speeds, Jonathan already mentioned that it's targeted to reach 100 Mbps by 2029. The government rationalized the regulatory costs and optimized the spectrum allocations. And of course, this involved preparing the auctions of new spectrum, notably in the low and mid band, so include not only 700 megahertz, but also like 2.6 megahertz and 3.5 megahertz. That's some of the idea. Oh, one more thing is on the regional growth activities. We formulate the gigabit city, particularly on the secondary cities, to connect with regional government in expanding the broadband coverage through giving some incentive, particularly for the development of data center outside of Jakarta and Batam. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Vivi. I have to say those are ambitious plans and priorities. Maybe if I could ask you a follow-up question, what worries you about the ability to achieve all of that ambition? Is there anything you're particularly concerned about?
On the how thing, I think there are a lot of prescription already, but then to realize in the implementation is another thing, mainly for financing. I think there are a couple of ideas in this regard. Jonathan already mentions about crowd-in private investment for digital infrastructure, particularly on the restructuring the public funding mechanism, reforming the regulatory barriers, and optimizing the vehicle like the public-private partnership or KPBU, and potentially state investment mechanism through our new Danantara. In the regard to the government funding and the fiscal incentive, I think rationalizing the regulatory costs, reducing high regulatory burden, which is now around 12.2%. The key strategies include the incentivized spectrum rollout by providing relaxation incentive, as well as the BHP review and rationalization by calculating the spectrum usage fee to ensure, to ensure the competitive, the fees are fair, competitive, and also maintaining the telco industry health. In regard to the Danantara, I think Danantara is a vehicle intended to accelerate the funding as well as the investment in Indonesia. So utilizing this financial support could reduce the risk as well as improve or increase the trust from the investment Indonesia. So some of the idea is to create a B2B relations as well as a private placement or debt deal. Some of or other thing is structuring the KPBU or public-private partnership by risk transfer and project viability, as well as building a flexible business model. I think there are many in the prescription of the funding, but again, the key is on the implementation for the collaborations between the government and the private entity.
Thank you, Ibu. Vikram, you bring a slightly different perspective to this. I mean, you're probably aware that there's exponentially high growth in the demand for data in Indonesia. It's a complex geography, as we all know, and the deployment costs in a country like Indonesia are extraordinarily high. So sitting where you sit, what are the 2 or 3 initiatives you'd love to see from the government that would enhance private investment in this space?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's an absolute honor to be on the stage with such distinguished speaker and also such a distinguished audience. I think we should give a big round of applause to the audience here. I attend a lot of such, but very attentive and very, and there are many Jonathans, but the last one was the most impressive. Listening to him, it was music to my ear. So, answering your question, I think my personal biggest learning in last 2 years, I have been in the industry for 2 decades, but the last 2-year learning is the pace of innovation and change, especially with AI, is exponential. What used to happen in decades are happening in months. So with that in background, and I'll touch upon it again. First thing first, the whole digital infrastructure, which includes telco and data center, fiber, the government needs to see this as a national strategic infrastructure. What does that mean? One is cost, second is time and speed of execution. If I have to roll out a fiber, if I take 6 months and Malaysia take 1 month or other country take, so that is one. Second, in terms of all tax, excise, everything, so it's a mix of both. Just to give you one data point, if I do a data center 1 gigawatt, it will cost me $120. Malaysia is doing it for $100. So that is why people in Malaysia is serving Indonesia consumption demand. But for everyone to know, Indonesia has everything. They have more power than Malaysia. They have more water, more land. So I think it is call for action. The second thing is, instead of subsidy, the mindset has to move to productivity-linked incentive. How do you link it with productivity in terms of execution? I'm bringing the point back, time is of essence. A lot of things which I saw from Jonathan, I think my request to the senior government officials will be, please move fast. One example, I think when you talk about spectrum also, 3.5 is the golden spectrum. Today, when I see the roadmap, it is coming on 2028. It doesn't help. And I'm just giving example in terms of call for action. So, linking it back to the first presentation which I saw, what does 8% GDP growth mean? It means zero poverty. And without the whole digital eco-infrastructure, I think it will be a struggle. So I think it has to be looked from a very different lens, and it needs a lot of private-public partnership. I'm again sorry to say, don't expect everything from Dhanantara. It has to be a lot of private participation, private-public partnership, which has to get level playing field, because it needs a lot of capex. That is what my 2 cents will be.
Thanks, Vikram. You touched on the data center concern, and if I hear you right, that Malaysia is actually providing data center capacity to Indonesia. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes, it was coming from Jonathan. What is happening today, there are data centers outside Indonesia which is serving Indonesia demand. Whereas Indonesia has everything. It has power, it has water, it has land. We just need to invest on human talent. But it goes back to the point of what I saw from the presentation. Why is it happening like that? Even Singapore doesn't have power. Today, as we speak, Malaysia has run out of power. They'll get power on 2027. Indonesia has everything. But I'm just trying to answer why is it happening like that. I think Malaysia got some of their policies right so that you can execute it fast, you get it at the right price, and that is what we need in Indonesia now, so that Indonesia can not only serve their sovereign domestic demand, they should be in a position to serve regional and world demand.
So Ibu Alamanda, Vikram talked about talent, and I guess it would be useful to understand your perspective on this issue, because the opportunities are increasing, but they're perhaps not being evenly distributed. And so what can be done to ensure that Indonesians, wherever they live, can turn connectivity into real economic opportunity? Because fundamentally, digital for digital's sake is not what we're all here to promote. It's digital for economic growth and jobs. So how do we take advantage of that?
Yeah, thank you so much. So it's an honor to be here today. Thanks for having me today. So I think Um, I will answer your question with a real story about our students in east of Indonesia, Nusa Tenggara Timur. So in Binar, we've been trying to get CSR money and also government funding to give out scholarship to our students. So one of our student example, so he was already like 30 years old. He was a truck driver in the east part of Indonesia, and his income was only about like 800,000 a month. And then he joined one of our scholarship program um, from the mineral company in NTT, and it was only like 3 to 6 months program, boot camp program, software engineering, and after he graduated, now he lives in Batam, work for a Singaporean company as a software engineer, and his income now is already like double digit, like more than 15 million rupiah. So this really shown that this is just one example. We have 15,000 graduates all over Indonesia through our bootcamp program. Again, this is just one example of how opportunity and education is the most important thing of like making the income higher in Indonesia. But that's like a good story. But I will tell you, one of our students as well, he got scholarship from one of the government funding. He lives in Aceh, and during the program, he told us that he will not have internet access for like 2 months. So what we did is we record all the session and then we send him the USB. So imagine like again the internet access is really still an issue in Indonesia. And I think moving on to the education and opportunity, yes, Indonesian outside of like the big cities needs that opportunity. But unfortunately, the purchasing power of education in Indonesia is very low. Because Binar previously we had like a B2C model where we charge like about like 5 million rupiah for 6 months program. And then we shut it down last year because the growth is not like this, but it was like this. And I learned this from the data from Bank Mandiri. The priority of purchasing power of education is like the lowest in Indonesian. So I think this is where we need like government support and the CSR to really channel this funding to education upskilling. So that's my take, and also like the the students from east part of Indonesia. He work now for a Singaporean company remotely from Batam. So the income still in Batam, not in Singapore. So this is one of the example of how we as a corporates in Indonesia open up remote jobs as well. Because when I talk to like the SOE, the Danantara portfolios now, they're not accepting remote worker. While we have software engineers from like Sumatra maybe, where they can stay in their city and the income will be stay in that city, and then the economy will grow in that city. So that's maybe one of my insight as well. How can we as a corporate or startup company, startup companies now accepting in Binar we have because we're still work from anywhere, so we have employees from all over Indonesia. So I think that's my insight.
Thank you. Thank you. Vikram, I want to come back to you for something else that you touched on, which is energy, right? And you said that energy is abundant in Indonesia, at least compared to Malaysia. But the rapid expansion of the internet, of data centers, of all of these digital use cases is going to be energy intensive. So what's a longer term strategy for achieving this kind of growth through digital transformation, but doing it in a sustainable way?
No, I think this is extremely important. Indonesia, the country, is very, very blessed in terms of a lot of natural resources and also energy. Having said that, we need to pivot towards green energy. We need to make sure, just to give you one example, we created our AI factory in Jatilohar. I started with a version called L450. Then we moved to H100. This will all air cooled. Now GB200 is liquid cooled. The energy piece is insane. So how do we make sure that, there is a long-term view on supporting some of these things with the right green energy? This will be very, very strategic. But in short term, Indonesia has an advantage. We need to get a head start by having the right policy, making sure that we have AI factory. I want to call out one important data point. Look at like this. Today, what we call it as connectivity. Telcos have been in the business. You add connectivity with compute, which is intelligence. And you have to take it to villages. See, the productivity will come in villages faster than in main cities because the opportunities are less there. You have to give them the opportunity. I want to share with you my personal experience in Jayapura. We created a small AI experience center. I saw doctors from Jayapura, how seriously they are taking. They are telling me that today you have a small compute, they are training their data. They can be 100% sure that the patient is having a typhoid or a dengue. So these are life-saving opportunities which can benefit the people. And that is where, all the natural resources, whether it is energy, whether it is spectrum, need to be linked to that 8% GDP growth. You can't look at it in silos. That is what my request will be.
That's an excellent point. Ibu Almond, I want to come back to you because you talked a little bit about startups. And if you look at the startup ecosystem in Indonesia, there may be huge potential here to tap into all of the creativity, the intellectual capacity. But what else do you think it's going to take from a policy perspective to nurture that startup ecosystem?
Yeah, I think seeing all the news about startup in Indonesia, it's make me sad, honestly. I think integrity is the most important value that we need to hold as a startup founders. But sometimes we tend to look at the negative side of things. But when we see like the impact of digital startups, someone mentioned about from Komdigi mentioned about how Gojek helps millions of drivers, not only the drivers but also the GoFood merchants. So I think that's the we need to see the impact as well, the positive side. And in BNR alone, this year we partner up with Microsoft and we train 125,000 civil servants for AI learning. So again, I think we need to keep supporting startup, and the pentahelix also very important, where startup needs to work with the corporates and also the government, media, and school as well. So yeah, I think now also with the AI rising, it's the homework of our us in digital startup. For example, now is the era of like AI agent, not only generative AI. Next year, AI agent will keep growing. Imagine like in the next 1 or 2 years, our organization structure will not only be human, but there will be AI agents alongside with people. So yes, there are a lot of like jobs will be gone, but there are a lot of like new jobs also rising. For example, now we have like HR manager. In the future, we'll have like AI HR manager who will manage the performance of AI agents. So that's what we also been doing in BNR. So we already restructure our organization structure. One human has like 3 AI agents to work with. Again, with this AI keep rising, the digital AI startup needs to work a lot with the corporates. And also like when we talk about the learning part of AI, I met with a lot of like university and schools as well. They're trying to force the student not to use AI. But I think for me, as an employer, I want to hire people who use AI. So I told them we cannot stop our students to use AI, but encourage our students to use AI and shift the way we do exam, for example. Now, exam, they can use AI, but we can use like a project-based learning to help them to learn how to really execute things. And also, we need to teach them how to learn the meta skill, the learnability, because in this era of digital and AI, everything moves very fast. Today, I learn AI agent, maybe in the next 3 years, it will be different. So we need to be able to learn quickly. So that's the thing that the school also need to shift, and the university also needs to shift.
That's such an important point, I think, that you just made, that I hope everyone in our audience takes to heart, that often in the name of preserving some old-fashioned sense of maybe academic integrity, we may be churning out a generation of students who don't know how to use AI at a time when we can't afford to do that. So Ibu Vivi, what you're hearing from our 2 other guests, I think, is a lot of asks from the government around energy, around skills, around investment, cloud, data, infrastructure. This obviously touches many, many parts of government. So what does an effective whole-of-government approach to this kind of reform look like? And what do you think are some of the institutional challenges Indonesia might face in achieving this kind of progress?
I think the effective Indonesian digital transformations require a fundamental shift from the silo operations to the unified data-centric as well as collaborative or in the whole of government. So there are 2 ways at least that we are striving for. First is the consolidations of data and services to support the Indonesian DPI to provide better, faster, and inclusive public services. I could give some example in this regard, particularly in Bappenas, we coordinated the One Data policy. We across the governments, not only at the national but also at the local levels, we provide or develop data standardizations, universal metadata formats, and also establish a code of reference in order to exchange the data across the government. And also working together with the ComDG, establishing a data exchange infrastructure. Now we need to enhance our SPLP, the network, the government network for government services, in which now we started to piloting the DPI in the, or on the social assistance, later on for the ease of doing business, as well as the taxes policies. So in this regard, the SPLP or the the government networks for public services need to be strengthened, not only flowing the data of government, but also getting of data from the non-government side, like from the electricity company, the energy company, and of course from the private entities. Other things that we are strive for is also integrating policy and strategic collaborations. In this regard, we have a committee to accelerate the digital government through the presidential decree, in which we are working in a team to strengthen the DPI. And also, of course, in regard to data protections, the government now, we already feel that we need to accelerate, like Jonathan mentioned, to strengthening or elaborate the personal data protection by strengthening the personal data protection authority. And of course, on the cyber security, AI oversight, and now like already happening in social assistance, we are sandboxing to meet also with the local regulations, as well as the coordinations at the local level. And of course, it involves the development of digital talent, both at the public entity and also from, I think, from the productive age now to improve the digital literacy.
Thank you, Ibu. Vikram, you've heard a little bit about AI from the discussion today, and you'll see it in our report. But given your unique perspective, sitting as a provider, where do you see AI taking Indonesia? And I guess specifically, how are you preparing for that in your company?
I think this is a very good question. Personally, I feel very blessed as the CEO of Indosat. I had the opportunity for last 2 years to work with some of the best minds globally. When I say so globally, whether it is tech companies, whether it is consulting companies. So I'll share with you my 2-3 learnings. Big picture, today, Indonesia is at a level playing field. Historically, countries like China, India, they churned out a lot of engineers. And they had created those colleges, and that takes a lot of time. But with AI, you don't need to be a coder. So one way of looking at it is that this is a leveler. I think what we do from here will be very important. And from that perspective, let me bring it down to what I am doing at my company level. Very soon I realized that the first thing I need to start is how I become an AI native telco. And I want to share with all of you. The biggest challenge is not tech. The biggest challenge is people, culture, way of working. You have to reimagine. That is the biggest challenge. So as a leader, how do you invest your time? How do you give confidence to what Ibu was telling, that employees are not insecure? How do you make sure every employee, I remember my first town hall, especially people who are middle-aged or close to 50 like me, they were thinking, oh, I'm gone. So, I've been using, I use a lot of agent. I use LLM notebook. So, you have to be hands-on and give confidence. So only two metrics I track in my organization. We have close to 4,000 employees. First matrix I track is how many of my employees are using AI to do their job. Second, what percentage of my employees are involved on creating AI product. I think the point which I'm trying to highlight is it is more about people and talent than tech. The second piece is data, the whole data layer. If you don't get that right, it's garbage in, garbage out. So I'll not get into tech more, but once you do that at Indosat is a very iconic brand, 58-year-old brand, first brand which had connected Indonesia to the world. So we have been on record that we want to be an enabler on helping Indonesia move towards their digital vision. So we are all in. I'm in the process of creating 500 megawatt data center. I think data sovereignty is also a very important part. A lot of people ask me, we were on record that we want to launch Bhasa large language model. The question which was thrown to me by investors also, do you have the right to do that? You need billions of dollars. The answer is you don't need that. With AI, you can do it with 20, 30, 40 million also, but you need the right policy support, you need the right support, and you need to believe in it that how important it is. I just want to spend 10 seconds on data sovereignty. Think of it like this. After 10 years, if you don't hold your data sovereignty, you will be only taught what the others want to teach you. There is no other way you can protect your culture, your linguistic heritage. So I think these are very, very important choices. We are on the crossroad. And the best thing I can share with you, it is all about collaboration. No one company can do it alone. It needs a very horizontal way of working, not vertical. And that is where the right policy, the right vision, and organizations like World Bank, hand-holding, they have a lot of learning. So I think we should take this very seriously, and time is of essence. Specific time-bound action will help us move in the right direction. And if you believe in it, 5% is given. Last 10 years, 5% GDP growth. At least our president had set a right ambition of 8%. It is our collective responsibility that we go all in and make sure we contribute what we can do instead of expecting too much.
Thank you. We spent a lot of time now this morning talking about challenges, and I thank our wonderful panel for their candor in talking about the challenges around skills, the challenge around whole of government coordination, around incentivizing the private sector, and certainly our report highlights a number of critical challenges, but it does so in the context, I think, of observing that Indonesia is also on the cusp of huge productivity gains, huge opportunities for jobs and for growth if it can find the right path through tackling these challenges. So I want to give each of you an opportunity just to finish out our discussion with maybe a slightly more optimistic view of the world, of where do you see Indonesia in 2030, and what one policy or approach would you like it to take, if you could only pick one, to leverage all of this opportunity to get to 2030? I'll start with you, Ibu Almanda.
All right, thank you. So I think 2030, I wish and I hope all the people, especially the youth of Indonesia, can have same access as us in the big cities, so they can learn more and hopefully will have higher IQ intelligence. Because now I have a team in China who's doing our AI platform, and I saw like the difference of like the intelligence of people in China. So I think because in China, the urge to learn new things is very high compared to Indonesia. So I hope like Indonesian in 2030 we need to have the love of learning and also to read books. That's all from me. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Vikram?
Two things. One, in the world of AI, we cannot allow that 23% to be not even connected. I saw a chart that still 23% of people don't even have internet. So I think we have to think it has to be very inclusive. By 2030, we should be making sure it is not internet for all, it is AI for all. I think that has to be the mindset. We can't be going sequential. The second thing, the most important thing for Indonesia will be to invest on human talent. This whole concept of build, operate, and localize. I think foreign direct investment will come. They follow where they see money and returns coming. But as a country, we need to make sure that we are investing disproportionately on human talent. Then only we can unlock the full potential, and the en masse of developed country can happen sooner than later.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vikram. And Ibu Vivi, the last word goes to you.
Yeah, currently, actually, the government is undergoing a shift from the e-gov through the more unified and data-centric government. So in this regard, we are preparing a new presidential decree for the digital government and also the grand design for the digital government 2045. So there are some target that's actually already put into the midterm development plan, like all the digital transformation will achieve the digital economy share of the GDP at least like 12-13%. And then also like already asked about the 90% of the sub-district covered by the universal broadband. And in regard to the digital talent, the target is around 90% of individuals age 15 to 59, so the productive age, possess the ICT skill. I hope this could increase the competitiveness of the Indonesia, because the current report showing the quite big decrease of rank from 46 to 59, 51, in which many of them relate to the digital talent, the process of the computers, and of course the networks in Indonesia. So the most decisive policy shift is the mandatory implementation and the utilization of DPI for Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no doubt that Indonesia will enact those reforms and will take advantage of this wonderful opportunity. Friends, please help me thank our wonderful panel for this discussion. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. I would encourage you to download the report. You can see it at the link there, and to share it widely with your friends and colleagues who care so much about this issue. And with that, let me turn the proceedings back over to Ibu Rati.
Thank you so much, Pa Mahesh. And I hope our panelists could remain on stage. Before we officially conclude our insightful panel discussion, we would like to express our gratitude to our distinguished panelists. So I would like to invite the World Bank Division Director, Ibu Kerry, to please join us on stage for a token of appreciation and a group photo. Ibu Kerry, please present the placard to first Ibu Alamanda Shantika, CEO and founder of BINAR. And now to Bapak Vikram Sinha, President Director and CEO of Indosat Urido Hutchison. Finally, to Ibu Vivi Yulaswati, Bappenas Deputy for Economic Affairs and Digital Transformation. Now we will proceed to the group photo session. So, dear panelists, please arrange yourselves. Perhaps Ibu Kerry could stand at the center of the stage, and panelists could arrange yourselves evenly, either on the side of Ibu Kerry. Okay, great. Great, thank you so much, Ibu Kerry, Bapak Mahesh, and our esteemed panelists. You may now return to your seats. Dear ladies and gentlemen, Bapak dan Ibu, the panel discussion marks the end of the IEP launch today. Again, we encourage you to take a look at the full IEP report, which can be downloaded on worldbank.org/IEP. The details are up on the screen. You could also just take out your phone and scan the QR code on the screen, and you'll be directed to our reports page. For the latest information on World Bank programs, reports, and other activities, please follow our X or Twitter account @Bank Dunia. Finally, my name is Rati, and on behalf of the World Bank team, I would like to thank everyone here and online for your participation. We hope you've had a good day, and we surely hope to see you again at future World Bank events, especially the next Indonesia Economic Prospects launch in next 6 months. Terima kasih banyak dan sampai jumpa lagi. Goodbye for now.